In 1 Samuel chapter 12, I want to show you one verse, what a powerful verse it is. 1 Samuel in chapter 12. 1 Samuel in chapter 12 and verse number 24. Here in this latter part of chapter 12, Israel is being urged to serve God. And here Samuel is speaking to the people and telling them, if they'll just stay with God and do what God wants to do, God will bless them. But when he gets down to verse 24, notice here, he said, only fear the Lord and serve him in truth with all your heart. For consider how great things he had done for you. Now there is a lot sandwiched into that verse. Let me read it again. So he's narrowing it down. Now this is the main thing. This is where the neon lights. Now come on, this passage. Only fear the Lord and serve him in truth with all your heart. For consider how great things he hath done for you. Now, several things in this area of service. Faithfulness requires an amount of sacrifice on your part, and it boils down to obedience to God. But look here, he describes what God wants. You understand, God wants us to fear him. Notice here, the fear of the Lord and to serve him. Now, we don't bring out the subject of the fear of the Lord like we ought to. It's told to us in the book of Proverbs that fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. Yes. In one occasion. Another place it says the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. Yes. And what that means is that's primary school. That's the ABCs of knowledge. The fear of the Lord is the ABCs, the primary school of wisdom. And yet we de-emphasize the fear of the Lord with people. Oh, you don't have to have a fear of God. Yes, you do. I don't mean a dreading of God, but a fearful. Let me give you an example. My dad believed in work ethic. And we lived out in the country. We had at least an acre of garden that my dad would help us till it up, and he'd help plant it. And once after that point, he never stepped back into that garden. That was my sister and I's responsibility. That was our responsibility. And Mom came out sometimes and worked in the garden, but it wasn't her primary responsibility. It was ours. And my dad had a little, now you city kids won't understand this, my dad had a list that he wrote up every day for us, that he expected things he wanted done around the property every day. I remember when I got into high school and I got involved with athletics, sometimes I was getting up in the morning and going and running before school, but I had to go do these other things first. I had to go out and feed the livestock. He said, if you don't eat, the livestock eats. Well, that would be a good lesson today. You don't get to eat first. You eat when after you fed the animals, because they can't get out and get food like you can. You feed them, then you eat. And so we would get up, and he'd have this list every day. You say, well, how often? Every day. He had a list. And I remember sometimes I would have a track meet after school, and we would get in late. My dad worked a second shift job at the coal mine, and he would get home at 10. He got off work at 10:15. I know it's a weird time, but that's when he got off work. That meant he was going to be pulling in the driveway about 10:30 or so. Now, there were times after a track meet, I got up and got to school that day, had a track meet after school, and I may walk in the door about 9:30, 9:45. I still had my list. And there was no, well, I didn't get it done today, I'll work on tomorrow. That was not an acceptable excuse with my dad. And I remember being out in the garden with a flashlight and a hoe hoeing around the tomato plants. Out there looking at the driveway, see if he pulled in, yet hoeing around as frantically as I can, getting the work done. Because he expected you to get it done. My dad had a statement, no buts, ifs, or maybes. This is what you're supposed to do. If he sent you to the barn for a hammer, he didn't expect you to say, well, I'll get it in a minute. Oh, no. You might as well call the funeral home. They're going to need you. We're going to need them. And no, if he said go get the hammer, he expected by the time those words came out of his mouth, your body moving in the direction to go get it. Now, if you had questions, you could ask it while you were in action heading to go get there. I mean, he said, by the way, I bet that was a rough way to grow up. No, I'll tell you why. Most people can't say this. We learned obedience So that the very first time that I ever heard the gospel, I got saved. You know, I found that that's what God says I'm supposed to do. Okay. I didn't argue with God. I know people argue with God for years over salvation. We were taught you don't argue, you just do it. I hear these people excuse all the time. So the police officer said to lay down on the ground, and they said, why? Just shut up and lay down. Learn obedience. Now, while you're down there, if you have a question, ask. But get where you're supposed to be first. Have you been somewhere in a crowd and there's somebody in authority says you go through that door? Well, why do I have to just shut up and go through the door? After you get through the door, if you want to find out why they want to go through, fine. But get through the door. Why? Because we have not learned obedience. That's what's messing up our Christianity today. We got a bunch of people that are saved that don't know anything about obedience. Well, they read something in the Bible that says, well, that's just a holy suggestion. You know those 10 Commandment things? That's just God saying, oh, it'd be kind of nice, sort of, if you all did that kind of stuff. No, a command is a command. And we need to understand something today. God has said some things. We're not to argue with it. We're to do it and be in service to Him. Notice, He said we're to fear the Lord. Now, what do I mean by the fear of the Lord? I was afraid my dad was going to pull in that driveway and I didn't have those tomato plants hold around. Now, was I scared of my dad? No. But when I didn't do what I'm supposed to do, there was a dread. You ever not clean up your room? When you're supposed to clean up your room and there's a little bit of a dread, I gotta get this done for him. Oh, I'm going to be in trouble. That's what it means to fear the Lord. There are consequences of not following through and being obedient. We have Christians living with so many consequences in their life of not doing what God told them to do. Be obedient. Be obedient.